Hey everybody, welcome to the video. My first look for week 16 of the NFL season over on DraftKings. This is a first look, first reaction to the pricing on the week 16 slate. And given the information that we have right now, we'll try to throw a lineup together. But let's be honest, a lot is going to change throughout the week. COVID is going to be an absolute menace. I guess it's the new normal in the NFL now. It's just something we're going to have to deal with, as annoying as it is. But the Chargers and Chiefs are already dealing with a lot of issues as of right now. But obviously, we have no idea if these guys will get activated or not. Travis Kelce, Tyreek Hill, both on the COVID list is definitely some pretty major news. But hopefully everything's kind of calm this week as the week progresses. But as of right now, it's just more of a waiting game. And if the background looks a lot different, I'm back in Ohio from Florida, and it's going to be like this until the holidays are over. So hopefully it doesn't look too bad. But if you do find this video helpful in any way possible, make sure you leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet already. If you want to take that one step further, become a fish member over on Patreon. Link is down below in the description for that. Cheat sheets, optimizers, ownership projections, and everything you'll ever need. Link can be found down below for that. And last but not least, this video is sponsored by PrizePicks. I'm sure most of you know this by now, but if you don't, it's daily fantasy sports simplified, just you versus the projections. There's no sharks, 150 max contests, or salary cap restrictions, or anything like that. Just you versus the props they offer each and every single day. And as of right now, if you sign over on PrizePicks, you can get a free money bonus. There's an instant deposit match up to $100 when you use code CPEN and tell them I sent you. But I think it'll be it for the plugs for the most part. So without further ado, let's dive into today's video. And as always, we'll start with the quarterback position. And as of right now, not a ton of guys are really standing out to me. Like, if we look up top, I'm not going to play Patrick Mahomes if Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce are out. Obviously, I think they could still test negative and play, but if they happen to be out, I mean, there's just no way I'm playing Mahomes at nearly $8,000. Josh Allen's facing New England, not really a spot I like to attack too much, especially on a big slate like this. I mean, yeah, he's a fine tournament play because he's Josh Allen, but I just don't really feel the need to want to play Allen this weekend. I mean, the price is kind of low at $7,500 for him, but even that, I just don't really like the matchup here. Tom Brady facing Carolina. If you had Mike Evans and Chris Godwin and Antonio Brown, I'd probably say, yeah, this isn't too bad of a spot. But Chris Godwin's definitely out toward the ACL, unfortunately, which I love Chris Godwin, so it really sucked to hear that news. Mike Evans, he is questionable to play. We're not sure if he's going to play or not if he happens to be out. We're left with a potential AB who's not even confirmed playing yet. So it could be a really messy situation for the Buccaneers. Leonard Fournette's also out as well. So I'm not really too big on Tom Brady, even though he's priced nice, but I'm just really not loving the spot versus Carolina, potentially down a lot of skill players. Justin Herbert's the first guy that maybe looks interesting to me. He is facing Houston, though, and the only problem with that is this game's probably not going to be too competitive. I could see the Chargers blowing out the Texans, which kind of sucks for Herbert's upside, because if they're up by 3 or 4 touchdowns in the fourth quarter, probably going to lay out the gas a little bit, maybe get some more Justin Jackson. Depending on who the running back is, Austin Eckler is currently questionable. It sounded like he was going to be placed on the COVID list. Ended up not being on the COVID list, which is just kind of an interesting situation there. But Herbert's a fine play at $7,200 versus Houston. I just worry about a blowout. But if there is this blowout, there's a good chance Herbert probably got close to 303 or 4 touchdowns at that point, as long as there was no vultured rushing touchdowns around the goal line. Lamar Jackson, we're not sure if he's going to play or not. Harbaugh is hopeful that he's going to practice on Wednesday. But if he happened to be out once again, you could go right to Tyler Huntley, who apparently is pretty good at fantasy football. I mean, 35.9 points last week versus Green Bay. And not even a full game versus Cleveland. He had nearly 18 fantasy points, and he's running the ball quite a bit. 73 yards last week, 45 the week prior. Even week 11 versus Chicago, he had 40 rushing yards. So I think Huntley is definitely in play, and if he does play, big bump to Mark Andrews, because whatever reason it is, I mean, I know Mark Andrews is awesome, but he loves Mark Andrews for some reason. My two favorite quarterbacks as of right now are Matthew Stafford and Jalen Hurts, kind of exactly like the Tuesday slate last night, where those were the two best quarterbacks to pick from, but Stafford's only $6,700. He's facing Minnesota. And Jalen Hurts is only $6,400, and he's facing the New York Giants. Both these guys look fantastic, in my opinion. Before we talk about them first, though, if we just scroll down further, I just don't see anybody going to play. Russell Wilson at $6,100 is so cheap, but it's definitely deserved. Like, he's just so awful. And, I mean, it says something where when Russell Wilson is only $6,100, and I really have no interest to even talk about him. There's just no way I'm playing Russell Wilson. And then if we dip even lower, I just don't see really anybody I want to play, like anybody at all. So I really kind of keyed in on that mid 6K range with the two quarterbacks I was just mentioning, Jalen Hurts and Matthew Stafford. Taking a look at Stafford first, it's easy to stack him up because we have just clear pass catching options with him. The obvious one, Cooper Kupp. I know he's expensive, but he just goes off every single week. You had to accept that fact. Then you have Van Jefferson. You have Odell Beckham Jr., who just got recently added. Then you maybe have Tyler Higbee. We'll see if he plays. I don't know really what's going on with Tyler Higbee, but I'm hoping he does play, which would be a nice bump for Matthew Stafford over Kendall Blanton as of right now. But this price is too low. It's a beatable defense. Besides last night, he had 3 weeks in a row of 3 passing touchdowns and over 23 DraftKings points. So even though Jalen Hurts definitely looks good, $6,400, I only really have Dallas Goedert to pair him with. I just can't trust Devonta Smith right now. Both quarterbacks look great in my opinion. I could see wanting to go with Jalen Hurts in cash games over Matthew Stafford because he's cheaper and facing the Giants, but you should not be scared of their defense. They're not very good versus the run either, but I'm going to plug in Stafford because I want to make more maybe of a tournament lineup just in this video, because if I'm using Matthew Stafford, I got to pair him up with one of his pass catching options. Yes, obviously Cooper Kupp is the clear-cut guy you'd want to use, but there are some other guys to at least take a glance at, like Van Jefferson here, $5,500. Then you have Odell at $5,300. Then you have Skarnek here, who is like the great value brand version of Cooper Kupp, but we're going to plug in Kupp here. Like, I don't think I have to show you guys the numbers and what he's done this year, but it's just kind of silly. 37, 34, and 29.9 points the past 3 weeks. He's going to get you 10 plus targets. He's going to get you 7, 8 plus catches. He's going to get you over 100 yards. He's probably going to find the end zone once or twice. He's expensive, but he is the safest player roster in DFS this season. He's kind of like the Derrick Henry of the wide receiver position. So we're going to plug in Cooper Kupp, and we're going to feel pretty darn good about it. And if we're using a Rams stack, I'd like to run it back with a Minnesota Viking. And since there's a lot of value at the running back position this week, and just some overall value in general, because guys either being out or COVID issues, so we should have enough money to spend up a little bit. And Justin Jefferson's the guy I want. I'd say there's a decent chance he could be back this week, but even then, Justin Jefferson has had many great games with Adam Thielen playing, so I'm not really concerned about that. It would be definitely a big hit to KJ Osborne, but I know it wasn't a great night on Monday for the pass catching options of the Minnesota Vikings. I think Kirk Cousins only had less than 100 passing yards. It was pretty brutal. Still got into the end zone, though. Had 10 targets, only caught 4 of them, though. But Jefferson has been incredible this season, and he's just the clear-cut run-back option for this Rams stack here. So this is very expensive. Kupp's $9,100, Justin Jefferson's $8,100. We're only left with under $4,500 left for the remaining parts of our lineup, which is a lot. But I think we can make it work as long as we find some value elsewhere, like I said, there's plenty of value, especially at the running back position this weekend due to injuries and whatnot. So after we got that stack, and obviously if you want a double stack, you could throw in a Van Jefferson or an Odell, but I'm not going to do that in the specific lineup. So we're going to move on to the running back position. Obviously Dalvin Cook's going to be in play every single week. Austin Eckler is kind of the big news here, because if Eckler happens to be out, that is a huge bump for a guy like Justin Jackson, and I guess Joshua Kelly as well. But Justin Jackson will be the guy I had the most interest in, and if he is out, like if Austin Eckler happens to miss, Justin Jackson is only $4,200. And even last week, with Austin Eckler being limited, he saw 13 carries. He had 86 yards, only had 1 target for 13 yards, but had 11 fantasy points. And if Eckler is out, we're probably going to see close to 20 total touches for Justin Jackson, and he should be using the passing game, which would be an awesome play at $4,200. So we have to monitor that situation. As of right now, we might even use him in this lineup, just kind of assuming Austin Eckler is out, but as of right now, we have no idea. But we got to keep our eyes and ears peeled for some news on Austin Eckler, because that could change a lot of things this weekend. I'd say the big news here is that Leonard Fournette is out, which is a massive bump for Ronald Jones. Like, Ronald Jones being the clear-cut RB1 in this offense at only, $5,100 this week? Yeah, $5,100. I know the matchup maybe isn't great versus Carolina, but in limited time last week versus New Orleans, 8 carries, 63 yards, also had 2 targets. He's going to have the Leonard Fournette role for the most part. We should see 15 plus touches. He's just so cheap. This is a good offense now. It's not going to be probably as good without Chris Godwin, and also if Mike Evans is out, they're going to have a tougher time moving the ball, but it's still Tom Brady, and this is a team that's probably still going to score some points. So I do like Ronald Jones a lot. We're going to plug him in. I'd say he's pretty much a cash game lock this weekend. And scrolling back up, talking about some other running backs. Joe Mixon's questionable. Alexander Madison, not really a viable play unless Dalvin Cook happened to be out. Patterson, Barkley, just no real interest here. Barkley maybe versus Philly. They are not good versus running backs, but I just hate playing any New York Giants at this point. Swift, he's questionable. James Robinson, though, he's a guy that I think is going to be massive chalk once again. He was only $5,400 last week versus Houston. Saw a season-high touch total, had 18 carries, 6 targets, 3 catches, good for 18 fantasy points. It wasn't a huge day, but I did get the job done on last week's slate, because last week's slate was just ugly. So even then, Robinson only scored 17.8. It was actually one of the better plays at running back, as awful as that sounds. But he didn't really see much of a price bump. And if we're going to get 20-plus touches with involvement in the passing game versus the New York Jets, who are bleeding points to running backs this season, like Duke Johnson of all people, Duke Johnson had 30 DraftKings points, and even Myles Gaskin had 6, barely playing at all. So James Robinson is definitely the clear-cut cash game lock this weekend at running back, kind of in addition to Ronald Jones. And both these guys are below $6,000. So like I was saying, we have plenty of value on the slate to fit in some studs. At this point, we have under $4,000, but keep in mind we can throw in a cheap tight end and a cheap defense, so I don't think it's going to be too much of an issue here. So at this point, we can either knock out another wide receiver or kind of mess with the ugly positions with tight end or defense. But there's one wide receiver who, if he happens to be good to go and play, his suspension was lifted, he would be close to a lock for me, because if Mike Evans is out and we know Chris Godwin is out, I mean, the ball's going to go somewhere, and he's clearly the most talented wide receiver on that roster right now, and it's Antonio Brown. He's only $4,100 this week on DraftKings. I know we're kind of doubling up with the run game and the passing game for Tampa, but it's going to be quite consolidated just due to some injuries. Well, if Mike Evans is in, it does change things a little bit, but Chris Godwin being out is, I think, huge for Antonio Brown. And below $5,000, I don't care who he's playing. I don't care if he's going up against the best corner of all time. Carolina does have a decent defense, but I'm not concerned here. Like 11, 8, and 13 targets the last 3 games Antonio Brown played, 13, 34, and 24 points. And if those guys happen to be out, he's probably going to push for 15-plus targets, if we're being honest. And Tom Brady is going to be quite vengeful after last week. Like, he got embarrassed by the New Orleans Saints. Did nothing. They scored 0 points. That doesn't happen for Tom Brady. So he's going to be coming out probably with a lot of vengeance, and I want to be on the good side of that. So I like AB a lot at $4,900. Just too cheap. And I mean, if he's fully good to go, practices all week, and everything goes well, I mean, him and Ronald Jones for Tampa would be quite close to locks for me at their price points. So at this point, we only have $3,400 left. Let's just plug in a cheap defense so we know what we have to work with. I know it's going to have to be a cheap one, but we scroll all the way down. That's what I do every single week. Just scroll all the way down and find the first viable defense. Panthers, no thank you. I have 2 Bucs players. That just doesn't make sense. Texans versus the Chargers. Can't do that. Vikings versus the Rams. I'm stacking the Rams, so I don't think I should play the Vikings defense. Bears versus Seattle, maybe. Maybe they are missing a lot of players right now, but they are facing Seattle. I'm not scared of that offense right now. Giants versus Philly. Not really. I don't think I want to go that route. Falcons versus Detroit, maybe. That actually might not be bad. The Lions also versus Atlanta. Like, both these defenses, the price the same. I could actually see going one of these routes. And the Falcons are at home, so we'll just give them the slight edge. Let's just plug in the Falcons, or we could go with the Jaguars versus the Jets. That would correlate fine with James Robinson. We'll see what we have to work with. Let's just plug in the Jags for right now, just to pair up with James Robinson. Now we have $3,750 left. We're going to have to find a very, very cheap tight end here. None of these guys really stand out to me too much this weekend at first glance. We scroll all the way up top, Travis Kelce on the COVID list. Hopefully he plays. If he happens to be out, Blake Bell, I guess, becomes somewhat interesting. If we could actually find Blake Bell's price point, I'm assuming he's $2,500. If he's not, I'd be... Oh, Blake Bell's also on the COVID list. Okay, well, that sucks as well. I guess that plan's out the window. So what are we left with at that point? I think we have Noah Gray. Noah Gray, I'm assuming he's $2,500 too. I mean, we know Patrick Mahomes will utilize his tight end. So, I mean, maybe Noah Gray at the bare minimum of $2,500 is playable. Yeah, he's bare minimum of $2,500. I mean, it might not be terrible. He had 3 targets one week versus Las Vegas. And if those guys are both out, the ball's got to go somewhere. If we just plug him in, that leaves us with $5,000 left for the flex spot. And it should be maybe a somewhat decent player here. So right around $5,000, we have Stevenson, Crowder, Jamal Williams. I was hoping that said Javonte, Jerry Jeudy. I mean, it's not pretty. We have Gabriel Davis here at $4,700. Emmanuel Sanders is currently questionable. He missed last week. We know Cole Beasley's on the COVID list, which means he's going to miss this week. And is it 8 and 7 targets? It's not a great matchup versus New England, but they're going to have most of their attention on Stephon Diggs. So I don't think Gabriel Davis would be a bad option here. That's not a terrible looking lineup if you just want to completely punt tight end. So you have Stafford to Cooper Kupp, ran back with Jefferson, Ronald Jones and James Robinson at running back. We kind of have the Jags defense correlated with James Robinson there, assuming they have a lead and they can just grind out the clock with James Robinson. We have Antonio Brown, assuming Mike Evans is out. Chris Godwin's out, assuming he plays. Even if Mike Evans plays, I mean, we can still play Antonio Brown, no questions asked there. We have Noah Gray at tight end, and then we have Gabriel Davis because he was the last piece fit. But if those guys, well, Cole Beasley's out, but if Emmanuel Sanders is out again, I mean, it's going to be the Gabriel Davis and Stephon Diggs show. And Gabriel Davis is a talented wide receiver, and 2 touchdowns last week. He's a big body. They can use him around the red zone. So I don't think that's too bad. If you want to spend up a little bit more at tight end, and let's just say Austin Eckler was out. So here's the situation if Austin Eckler is out. We would 100% be playing Justin Jackson at only $4,200. And that would leave you $3,300 left at the tight end spot, which we scroll all the way out of this dumpster fire range. we are left with like a Cole Kmet, which is fine. The Seattle Seahawks are actually really bad versus tight ends, and Kmet had 9 targets last week, 13.1 points. So that doesn't look too bad either. So if Jackson is the starting running back for the Chargers, we have the same lineup, but then we have Cole Kmet and Jackson, which actually looks a little bit better. But yeah, definitely a lot of ways we can go this week. It should be actually a fun slate. I'm looking forward to this slate. I wasn't looking forward to last week's. This week, I think, is going to be a fun one. But with that being said, I think that'll be it for the video. So I hope it was helpful, and if it was, make sure you leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet already. Check out the Patreon. If you do want some extra content, I think there's some good stuff over there. Do put a lot of time into it. And don't forget, this video was sponsored by Prize Picks. And as of right now, if you're signing over there, you can get a free money bonus up to $100. Instant deposit match as soon as you sign up. When you use code CPEN and tell them I sent you. But I think that'll be it. I'll stop rambling, and I'll see you guys on Thursday for the showdown video.